Today we will be watching the movie Gerald's Game. Please turn the subtitles on and spoilers ahead. At the start of the movie, we see a woman packing her clothes into a bag. Then, a man can be seen doing the same, but he also packs a handcuff in his bag. They're Gerald and Jessie, a married couple who are going out for a vacation. Their relationship hasn't been the strongest in recent years, so Gerald had this trip planned to possibly save the marriage and spice up their sex life. On their way, they get stopped by a dog which is eating a dead mouse. Jessie feels bad for the starving dog. Gerald honks at the dog, which steps aside and they move on. They reach their vacation house, which is very far from the city. Jessie seems happy to see the beautiful place. After opening the fridge, Jessie cuts a few slices of meat and takes it outside. She starts calling for the dog that they had encountered earlier. Meanwhile, Gerald takes a blue pill, or we can say Viagra, as he has something planned. Soon, the stray dog appears, and Jessie takes the meat closer to him. But Gerald comes out, and the dog gets scared and runs away. Gerald takes Jessie inside the house, and they don't even bother to close the door. Jessie gets ready in her new night dress and starts to pose seductively. Gerald then comes out with the handcuffs in his hands. Jessie seems excited by his idea. Gerald cuffs Jessie's hands to the bed and takes one more pill. They start to get intimate, and Gerald suggests that Jessie can shout if she wants, cause no one will hear them. He says that Jessie should yell help. This seems to be a fantasy of Gerald's and Jessie plays along. She calls out for help. Gerald starts to get rough with her, which quickly turns off Jessie. She says that she's not comfortable with what Gerald was asking from her. But Gerald doesn't listen to her, which makes Jessie mad. She shouts at him and tells him to uncuff her hands. After this, the couple get into an argument. Gerald says that he wants to bring some change to their relationship and to save them from growing apart. But Jessie is sad to find out that he had such fantasies. She asks Gerald to let her out of the handcuffs. But Gerald denies to do so. He comes close to Jessie and gets bitten by her. Once again, they get into an argument. Gerald starts to feel something in his shoulder. Something is definitely wrong, and Jessie sees it too. Gerald starts getting a heart attack due to the 2 pills he took earlier. Jessie thinks he is joking with her, but Gerald's condition gets worse, and he falls on Jessie's body. Jessie uses her legs to get Gerald off of her body. But Gerald's body falls out of the bed. Jessie calls out to him, but gets no response. She tries to get the cuffs off from her hands, but she is helpless. She tells Gerald that she will let him do anything, hoping that this all is a joke. But she notices the blood flowing on the floor, and realizes that this wasn't a joke after all. She yells out help, for real this time. But no one is there to listen to her. They were miles away from any home in the area. Hours pass by, but Jessie is still cuffed to the bed. She hears something outside the window. She calls out hoping that there is a person. But it is the stray dog that Jessie was trying to feed earlier. The dog gets closer to Gerald's body, and Jessie tries to scare it away. But the dog bites a chunk of meat from Gerald's hand and starts eating it. Jessie can't do nothing but cry. All of a sudden, Gerald gets up. Jessie finally seems relieved, but she notices that Gerald's body was still lying on the ground. Gerald was actually dead, and the one that was standing in front of her was nothing but her hallucination. In her hallucination, Gerald starts to talk about their failing marriage, and his problems with not getting excited in their relationship. Jessie doesn't know what to make out of all this. Gerald reminds Jessie that since his death, Jessie had wasted 5 hours doing nothing. He even calls her stupid. Gerald reminds her that her life support system was running out. She was getting dehydrated, and her energy level was falling down. The staff were told not to disturb them for a whole week, so no one was going to save her. If she doesn't do anything to save her life, she will soon die. Jessie tries harder to get her wrist out of the cuff, and she succeeds. She breaks the bed handle and completely gets herself free. She steps forward and breathes a sigh of relief. But it was her hallucination again. She is still cuffed to the bed. The imaginary Jessie tries to motivate the real one by saying that she cannot give up on her life. The sun was already down and Jessie looks at her phone. If she manages to get her phone, she can call for help. Jessie tries to reach to the phone, but she cannot. The imaginary Jessie tells her to remain alive until she can get help. Gerald asks her how long she can survive without drinking water. The imaginary Jessie and Gerald both remind her of the glass of water that was above her bed. Jessie tries to get to the water. She lifts the one end of the bed top and lifts it to slide the glass towards her other hand. She successfully manages to grab the glass, but her hand doesn't reach her mouth. The imaginary Jessie tells her to put the glass back where it was. She does the exact same. Then, Gerald asks her about the night dress she had brought with her. It was a brand new night dress, and the tag that came with it was above the bed. Jessie takes the tag and rolls it to make a straw. She successfully manages to put it in her mouth. She grabs the drink back, and finally manages to drink the water. Her imaginary self tells her to save some water for later. Meanwhile, the dog was still feasting on Gerald's flesh. With all that Jessie had gone through, she gets tired and falls asleep. Soon, a noise is heard in the house, which scares the dog away. Jessie notices a tall figure in the corner of the room. The figure comes closer to Jessie, and it is a really scary being that's not a human at all. It shows Jessie a bag full of human bones and some jewelry. Jessie tells herself that it was nothing but her hallucination. She closes her eyes, but Gerald tells her that it was there to take her. It was her death. Jessie replies that it was just her hallucination, and not her death. But Gerald asks her, if that was not her death, then why did the dog run away? Jessie opens her eyes, and Gerald starts calling her Mouse, which triggers her into thinking about her past. 12 years ago, Jessie is out with her family to spend their vacation. Jessie doesn't want to ride the boat, so her father stays to keep her company. But everyone else rides the boat. Jessie was planning to watch the solar eclipse that day. Her father says that, when she was a child, she used to sit on his lap. He also calls her by the nickname Mouse. Jessie says that she still is a child, and sits on her father's lap. But, her father starts to molest her. Jessie wakes up from her sleep, and her whole body is in pain. Due to the irregular circulation of blood in her body, she starts to scream in pain. After a few minutes of screaming, she grabs the water and starts drinking it. Imaginary Gerald asks her why she didn't tell him about her father. Jessie had told no one about what happened with her father. Imaginary Jessie tells her that she married a man just like her father. Jessie starts crying, and Gerald reminds her about the tall figure she had seen last night. He shows her the footprint on the floor. He tells her that the tall figure was real, and that it will come again tonight. In the past, Jessie's father comes to her and apologizes. He says that they should tell everything to her mother, and starts crying. At the end, however, he manipulates Jessie into not telling anyone about that incident. And Jessie also promises that she will not tell anyone. At present time, the stray dog is still taking bites off Gerald's body. Gerald asks Jessie what will happen to her after she dies. He tells her that, when people find their body, they won't know how they died. He again reminds her of the tall figure, and says that it will visit her tonight as well. In the past, after their family trip, Jessie's father touches the pregnant womb of her mother. Seeing this, Jessie breaks a glass in her hands. Her father tapes her injured hand. And at present, Jessie wakes up and plans to cut her hand to get out of the handcuffs. Imaginary Jessie tells her that, whatever she is planning to do, she has to hurry, as she was dehydrating. She grabs the glass and breaks it. With the broken piece of glass, Jessie cuts her wrist. She knew that the blood was slippery. She uses the blood and finally gets her hand out of the handcuff. She grabs the key of the handcuff, and frees herself completely. She starts drinking water, and covers her injured wrist with bandages. She takes the car key, but faints because she has no energy left. When she wakes up, she finds that the dog had eaten chunks out of Gerald's face. Suddenly, the dog runs away. She sees the tall figure and steps forward. She gives her wedding ring to the dark figure, possibly to bargain for her life. She then starts the car, and sees imaginary Gerald waving at her. Due to lack of energy and stress, Jessie cannot keep control of the car. She hits the car onto a tree, but manages to survive the hit. She sees a house near where her accident took place. She sees two people with torch lights. She hugs the car to get their attention. She walks out of the car, and is finally saved. 6 months after this incident, Jessie writes a letter to her younger self. Her hand was still in pain from the cut, but she could write. Jessie was interrogated about the incident that took place that day. But she doesn't tell the truth, and says that she remembers nothing. It gets proven that Gerald's death was due to a heart attack. So, Jessie gets lots of money from the life insurance of Gerald. And with that money, she opens a foundation to help young girls who were victims of abuse. But every night in her sleep, she sees the tall dark figure in her room. The police also never found Jessie's ring inside the house. One day when reading the newspaper, she finds out that the police had captured a man named Raymond Andrew. Andrew was convicted of stealing jewelry from the graveyards. Andrew was also captured because he used to cut and eat the body parts of dead humans. He suffered from a rare disease which gave him the appearance that he had. Jessie figures out that what she saw that night wasn't her hallucination, but a reality. Jessie goes to the court hearing of Raymond Andrew, and sees him in daylight. Seeing Jessie, Andrew breaks the ties from his hands. Jessie isn't afraid of him. She steps close to him, and sees her father and Gerald in him. They were all monsters. She cracks a smile, and says that he was smaller than she thought. Jessie was finally free of the trauma she suffered as a child, and from when she was trapped in the house. Thanks for